Greetings, fellow detectives. Wizard Kitten here, bringing you a new Nancy Drew analysis video. Today's video is brought to you by the patrons over at Mystique Manor. Thank you for your continued support. Today's video was recommended to me by a fellow detective in the comments section of one of my most recent videos, and I was immediately intrigued by the idea. Ranking the top 10 most unrealistic Nancy Drew games. Now, the mystery genre as a whole inherently requires at least a little bit of reality suspension. There are several subgenres of mystery that lean more heavily on the side of realism, like true crime or police procedurals, but I would argue that the majority of mystery subgenres require more imagination. These might include supernatural mysteries, romance mysteries, historical mysteries, and amateur or private detective mysteries. In the case of the Nancy Drew PC game series, most of her cases fall into this latter category, thereby requiring some suspension of reality in order to fully immerse oneself into the enjoyment of the games. But what does this mean exactly? When you immerse yourself into fiction, you are choosing to enter an imaginary world with its own rules and regulations. With mysteries specifically, the crimes committed, the supernatural events, the characters we encounter, and the means and opportunities of culprits are often stretched somewhat in the name of storytelling. We, as tourists within these imaginary worlds, then have a choice. Do we allow ourselves to go along for the ride without questioning the logistics of the world? Or do we continue to cling to our own laws of physics, of which we are familiar? I think this choice ends up being particularly difficult within mysteries themselves, because they usually employ a combination of both realistic and fantastical elements. I personally believe that mysteries that strike a balance between the two are the most successful, because then they manage to feel relatable and connected while still bringing us on an adventure. All of the Nancy Drew games try to do this to an extent, with some being more successful than others. So, which Nancy Drew games take for granted our ability to suspend reality? Which ones take things just a bit too far? I have identified the 10 Nancy Drew games that I think ask a bit too much from detectives in terms of suspending reality. I have ranked the games on a series of 3 parameters. The first and most important parameter is the explanation. However unrealistic an element of a game is, if we get a reasonable explanation, or, any explanation, that's at least something. It helps with the world building and gives the game some credibility. The second most important parameter is the unrealistic element itself. This one is pretty subjective because what I deem to be unrealistic may not be the same as other fellow detectives. But I think it's important to quantify approximately how ridiculous the realism subversion ends up being. The third parameter is the pervasiveness of the unrealistic element, or how long the element is around. If an unrealistic element is essentially the basis for the game or is around for the entirety of the game, then it has more of an impact. On the other hand, if the element is only around for a bit, then it doesn't hurt our brains quite as much. The higher score a game receives, the more unrealistic it is overall. Ties are broken by the parameter priorities mentioned previously, and in the event of a true tie, by my personal preference. And here is your obligatory spoiler warning. The following 10 games will be discussed, and plot spoilers may be included. Proceed with caution. Without further ado, let's get to ranking. Number 10, Creature of Kapu Cave. As the lowest game on this ranking list, Creature of Kapu Cave received 1 star in each category. The most unrealistic element of this game is the ending. The rest of the game is arguably pretty grounded in reality and focuses a lot more on science, research, and beach activities than any stretches of the imagination. The ending, however, earns this game a spot on this list. The lava rock cave puzzle that descends in and out of the floor while Mike and Frank jump around on it is just beyond explaining. It only happens once, it's very brief, and it is technically explained as being part of the Kaput Cave booby trap system a la Indiana Jones, but that's about it. As such, it's not the craziest offender, but enough to make number 10. Number 9, White Wolf of Icicle Creek. This game is mostly realistic, but things start to get a bit out of hand when Isis shows up and Nancy needs her help to work through Trapper Dan's hidden cave system. While Isis herself is a bit unrealistic given just how intelligent she is, her entire backstory is justified by Julius McQuaid's journal, so we can let it slide. What we can't really let slide is how intricate and interconnected the cave system is. Trapper Dan's cabin, the cave system, Trapper Dan's needle, and the lodge are all very far apart, but we're supposed to believe that triggers within the lodge can have an effect on the cave system and vice versa. It's all very complicated technology, and is around for pretty much the entire latter half of the game, so 2 stars for its pervasive nature. I'll allow just 1 star for unrealistic element itself and the explanation, because we are at least told why the contraptions exist. Do we need to suspend what would have been possible for Trapper Dan to put together? Yes. But is it explained? Also yes. Number 8, Treasure in the Royal Tower. Okay, Treasure in the Royal Tower stands don't come for me, but the castle backstory is absolutely absurd. Don't get me wrong, I love it, I'm absolutely here for it, but the idea that some eccentric chocolate milk tycoon paid to have castles in France dismantled, transported to Wisconsin, and hodgepodged back together without anyone mistakenly finding Marie Antoinette's journal and more, it's extremely unrealistic. And because it's the setting of the mystery, it's around for the entirety of the game and is in fact the basis of the case. So 3 stars for pervasiveness. In its defense, Wickford Castle is entirely possible if someone really cared that much, and it is fully explained. So 1 star for each of those categories. It's not the worst, but if I'm being honest, the wackiness of Wickford Castle is always in the back of my mind when I think of strange choices in the Nancy Drew series. Number 7, Ghost of Thornton Hall. I gave this one the exact same score as Treasure in the Royal Tower, with 3 stars for the pervasiveness of the unrealistic element and 1 star for the element itself and the explanation. Hear me out. At the end of the mystery, we find out that the entirety of the mystery is based off of the hauntings being caused by carbon monoxide poisoning from the basement's faulty furnace. This is explained to us and is a realistic enough explanation, given that this has been an explanation for hauntings for a good chunk of human history. However, we're also told that Harper and Jesselyn have been dressing up as Charlotte, and there are also hauntings that happen outside of the main house. We're therefore left with the unrealistic explanation that the carbon monoxide poisoning is ridiculously powerful, which I don't buy. Honestly, I would have bought the explanation that Charlotte was just real. Seriously, I would have just left it at that. Number 6, Haunting of Castle Malloy. This is the first game where we get a 3-star rating in the unrealistic element category due to, drumroll please, jetpacks. Highly functional jetpacks, made in the early 1900s. It's just a no-go. The unrealistic element gets 2 stars for how long it's around as well, because it is around for quite a while in the game and is used fairly frequently. It's also used as an explanation for the Banshee. We can defend this choice somewhat because it is explained in that Brendan Malloy was a research scientist and an engineer, and it is conceivably possible that he could have come up with a jetpack. They do at least explain it, but there is a healthy chunk of reality suspension required for this one. Number 5, Secret of the Old Clock. Now, I personally don't have a problem with the fact that this game takes place in the 1920s or 30s. That's not the unrealistic dimension I have an issue with, because it's something that we know going into the mystery. It's the full purpose of the game to be set in the past, and I understand that. What I don't understand is some of the technology that is part of the mystery and how none of it is given any sort of explanation. Josiah Crowley's shed has some sort of industrial monstrosity that can do things that no technology in the early 1900s should be able to accomplish, especially for someone without training in that arena. The mini golf technology is also way too impressive. These unrealistic elements are strange to be sure, but not totally out of the realm of possibility, so they get 2 stars. They get 1 star for pervasiveness, since they're only attached to individual puzzles and aren't the basis of the plot itself. I do, however, have to give these elements 3 stars in the explanation category, because we get no information on how Josiah Crowley, a random old man with a penchant for theatrics, managed to put all of this together. Number 4, The Captive Curse. This mystery deserves 3 stars for its unrealistic element, and for how long it's around, because it's literally there the entire time. It's the basis of the game, in fact. We're told that this monster has been around for centuries, and that young women have been disappearing from the castle for just as long. The townspeople fervently believe that this monster, this one monster, has been living for hundreds of years and occasionally becomes very interested in finding a very specifically dressed young woman to kidnap and take away into the forest. This is at least explained as part of the legend or curse, so 1 star there, but I still just can't get past this original premise. If the monster, I don't know, reproduced or something, or if this was a one-time monster with a reasonable lifespan, then sure. But otherwise, this is just a lot of reality to suspend. Number 3, Ransom of the 7 Ships. So this game is less of one big unrealistic element and instead multiple pretty unrealistic elements. First of all, we have a monkey commune that play a wide variety of very complex games. Additionally, we have a culprit disguised as another culprit who somehow has apparently been in jail for several long years, even though Nancy has not aged a single year since that case. Finally, we have a historic pirate treasure hidden through a series of multiple complex puzzles, all of which are still perfectly intact and have not moved or broken at all despite how long they've been lost. All of these elements combined exist for the entirety of the game, and almost none of them are explained, so 3 stars for both those categories. I'll be nice and give it 2 stars for the unrealistic elements themselves because I guess they aren't completely unbelievable, but there we stand. Number 2, The Shattered Medallion. Let's get this out of the way first. 3 stars in all 3 categories. It had to be done. The entire basis for this mystery is so unrealistic that I can't reasonably rank it any other way. So first, Sunny June basically steals a game show, and the producers, don't come to stop him? Nobody comes to stop him, in fact. Everyone just goes along with it, and they continue to edit and produce this show, even though some rando took over? I just can't. What's worse, his reason for doing all of this comes down to finding some alien contraption that is given no explanation whatsoever. We don't even learn what it does. Absolutely nothing about this game makes any sense, and it doesn't make sense the whole time. It's pretty much absurd, and almost no amount of purposeful reality suspension can make it work. But it's still not the worst offender in my book. Number 1, Labyrinth of Lies. This game also receives 3 stars in all 3 categories, but I rank it higher because I have a personal gripe with this one in particular. The entire game revolves around at least one highly flawed principle: the theater sets. I love theater and have personally been in many plays, and I can tell you one thing with certainty. No theater production, not even the most prestigious ones in the world, would ever have theater sets like the ones in this game. We're talking lava. We're talking multiple locked doors in between the sets. We're talking massive stone stairways. We're talking real water. We're talking crazy intricate details. We're talking so many unrealistic, absurd things, and they don't even use them. Every single time we see the actors acting, they are not on a set. The sets are technically explained as part of some experimental project, but I don't even care. Never in a million years. Most unrealistic element of the Nancy Drew series by far. So, there you have it, fellow detectives, my ranking of the top 10 most unrealistic Nancy Drew games. To summarize, I don't believe that suspending reality in mysteries and mystery games is inherently a bad thing. In fact, it's often a requirement in order to fully enjoy a mystery story, because some of the best ones push the limits of where our imaginations naturally want to go. I love mysteries precisely because of that. They can take me on exciting adventures that I can't actually go on IRL. However, as I mentioned earlier, it becomes a problem when the suspension of reality takes a bit too much and in essence becomes distracting. Then, rather than adding to the game, it can start to detract. Labyrinth of Lies, I'm looking at you. But what do you think, fellow detectives? Do you agree with me? What games do you think are the most unrealistic? How do you feel about realism within the games? Is it something that matters to you? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you would like to come join a fantastic group of fellow detectives at Mystique Manor as a patron for the channel and support the making of more content like this, please check out patreon.com/wizardkitten. And as always, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more Nancy Drew and Sims 4 content. Thank you so much for watching, fellow detectives. I will see you soon.